Hello, hello. Welcome in Monday Live. I am Jason Priester, allclemsontigers.com. And can you smell it? I smell it. Change is in the air, folks. Change is in the air. The Clemson coaching staff's getting a makeover, or has gotten a makeover as we sit here now. Some of the changes you guys wanted, you've gotten. Maybe not all of them, but at least you know that Dabo Sweeney's not this old stubborn guy that's stuck in his ways and refuses to change and is loyal to a fault and all of those things. That guy, I've said it here 100 times, man. There's nobody out there that wants to win more than that guy. And I think these two coaching changes, man, kind of back that theory up. And if you just look at the amount what they've got invested in those coaches over the next 3 years, I think that only goes to further that statement. They've invested a lot of money in these guys, and they are two of the best at what they do, man. I think Matt Luke is a home run at offensive line. Chris Rupp, another home run there, coaching the defensive ends, adding him with Nick Neeson along that with that defensive line. That might be the best duo of defensive line coaches in the country. I mean, it's impressive what Dabo Sweeney's able to do when he decides to make a move. Home run last year with Garrett Riley. I know people still have questions about Garrett Riley. I still think that was a home run hire. Um, Even if it doesn't work out for whatever reason, man, at the time it looked like a home run hire. I still got faith in Garrett Riley. I still think he's the guy. But yeah, just two more absolutely knocked it out of the park this week, man. Absolutely knocked it out of the park this week. Before we get started, I want to remind everybody, if you've not hit that subscribe button, please do so. Hit that like button. Um, if you can hit that bell over there, it notifies you every time we go live. I'm right here every Monday, 7 o'clock. Man, we usually have a pretty good time doing these things. Me and Zach are right back here usually on Wednesday nights. We will not be here this Wednesday. Obviously, Clemson, South Carolina are facing one another. Rivalry game on the hardwood on Wednesday night. So no Paul talk this week. We'll be back next week. But again, if you have not done so, please hit that like button. Please hit that subscribe button. But yeah, right off the bat, we got coaching questions. Do you think the new defensive coach, guys like Denoff and Patterson, stay? I don't know, man. Clemson's thin at defensive end. I think Clemson's going to the portal for end. Um, that's just what I think. It doesn't matter if Denoff stays. Doesn't matter if Patterson stays. Um, do you want your starting defensive ends next year to be T.J. Parker and Cade Denoff? I don't know if that's. I don't know, man. I don't get excited about that. Um, I think you need a dude to bring in to pair up with T.J. Parker and kind of bridge the gap to the younger guys like A.J. Hoffler, David Ajabi, because you know Patterson and Denoff, they've been here a while now, and Patterson, I know he's been hurt here at the end of this season, but he's not been able to sniff the field. Denoff doesn't play a whole lot. We're talking about two highly touted guys. Now, maybe if they decide to stay, maybe this new coach can get them to where they need to be faster than on the track they were on. Because I've said it plenty of times, I think defensive ends have been extremely slow to develop at Clemson over the past few years. This should change that. Whether it means Denoff and Patterson stay, yeah, I don't know. That's yet to be determined. Clemson's already had about half a dozen guys hit the portal already, and I don't think we're done. I think we're going to see some more. It's just a matter of where they come from. I think I would look at offensive line. Guys like we already saw Mitchell Mays hit the portal. Guys like maybe Trent Howard, Brian Tucker, guys like that have been around a while. I think both those guys have graduated now and haven't played a whole lot. Howard started playing a little bit towards the end of the season, but I don't think either of those guys are in lines for starting jobs or anything like that. Something they could be able to do if they go elsewhere. So guys like that, and Denoff and Patterson are other guys I would look at. You know, guys that have been kind of passed by some of the younger guys. I hate this season. I hate the lull. I hate this lull between the end of the season and before the bowls. Nothing to talk about. I'm 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 sensing a little sarcasm there because I'm going to tell you, man. I have been as busy in the past few days as I've been ever. You're steady waiting on portal announcements. Clemson's picked up 3 commitments in the past few days. One of them out of the blue that I just had no idea was coming. Heck, the coaches didn't even know it was coming. Um, so it's been a whirlwind of a week. Absolutely, man. Absolutely. Yeah. Speaking of those 3 commitments, man, the biggest one of the bunch, 2025 defensive lineman Amari Adams. From right here where I live, I think most of y'all know that. Most of y'all know. I think most of you know I went to South Florence. And I do radio for South Florence most of their games this year, all of their playoff games through the whole entire playoff run. So I've been around South Florence a good bit this year. Um, I'm gonna tell you, man, they did an excellent job of keeping this information bottled up. I didn't. I started finding. I found out Saturday morning that it was going to be Clemson, and I was at practice every day, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday last week. Um, Not necessarily there to see what I could find out about Amari because I was prepping for the radio call Saturday and just there to watch practice and stuff. But nobody was talking, man. They kept that thing. They kept that thing so bottled up. Um, Again, I did not find out myself till Saturday morning that I had people hinting what it was gonna be, but nobody was telling me for sure. Then I got some details about it after the fact. Um, I got the story up on the site if anybody's interested in seeing how it played out. But we're talking about one of these in-state exceptions, man. That a Gamecock guy that grew up rooting for South Carolina, his family roots up rooted for South Carolina, and Clemson beats them out head to head. Although I'm told it came down to 3 teams: Clemson, South Carolina, and Georgia. Although I'm not sure exactly how hard Georgia's been pushing for him. Um, Not sure anybody was expecting him to come off the board this quickly either. Um, really came down to Clemson and South Carolina for getting down to the nuts of it. But we're talking about a guy that grew up a diehard South Carolina fan. His family grew up a diehard South Carolina fan, and um, I don't know when exactly the tide started to turn because people had this guy pegged for South Carolina. Everybody just assumed he was going to end up in South Carolina, including me. These are the battles that Clemson doesn't typically win. Gamecock fan, head to head battle with South Carolina. They usually end up in South Carolina, especially from this part of the state. Um, I started getting wind that it might not be South Carolina about a week before right after he said his commitment date. Because I'll be honest, I hadn't. I always keep up with follow him and track his movements and that kind of stuff, the visits and those things. But I was not looking for a commitment this early. I was surprised when he announced his commitment date. So I'm not real sure when the tide started to swing because the last time he visited Clemson was back for the Florida State game. So it's been a while. But he was on hand in Columbia when Clemson beat South Carolina. And he got an up close and personal look at how dominating that defensive front was. But I do think based on the way people talk about it, sounds like the tide had started to turn even before that. Nick Eason was a big factor in this thing, as he is with a bunch of those defensive linemen. But him wanting to go somewhere he could be developed and prepared for the NFL is what won him over. And Clemson's got that track record. South Carolina, not so much, especially when you put them side by side against Clemson. So I mean, I think that's what wins out in the end here. And I'll say this: don't buy into any of the message board talk that his dad's not on board. Um, I I have been told that is 100% unequivocally not true. That dad's fully on board. I know dad's all about getting that kid developed, and believes that'll happen at Clemson. Um, he came back to Clemson yesterday, actually. A quiet visit nobody really knew about. Got mom up there for the first time. I think a lot of people were expecting him announced around 3, and I don't know if that is why it got delayed, but they were up on campus yesterday, taking mom for the first time so she could see what it was all about because he didn't actually announce till closer to 7 last night when originally it was thought to be around 3. But anyways, yeah, big win for Clemson, man. Big one. You added on top of beating them in Columbia, last weekend, and that's got to make it taste a little bit sweeter. And it's a win Clemson kind of needed after going over 3 on those offensive linemen, those in-state offensive linemen early in the 2024 cycle. And I know I've said it here 100 times that Clemson was never getting 2 of those guys, but one of them was from right there in Greenville. And whether you're never getting them or not, when you go over 3, it's a bad look from an optics standpoint, no matter what. So big recruiting win. It's always a big one when you can pluck one away from South Carolina. How many offensive linemen does Clemson have coming in for a visit from the portal? One, right? Currently one. The Herring kid's coming in for a visit December the 15th, next weekend, or the weekend after. I can't remember the date off the top of my head. Weekend after next, yeah. I think he's at Penn State this weekend. I'm telling you, man, this is what I've never talked to him. Um, not from a lack of effort, but I've never talked to him. Um, but based on the few things I've heard, I kind of like Clemson's chances here. Have to see how some of these visits play out, but I'm liking what I'm hearing. So he's still going to take. He was at Texas Tech this weekend. I think he goes to Penn State this weekend. Maybe I have it wrote down over there, but um, let some of these visits play out, and we'll see where we're at. But the early returns seem to be pretty good here. Bo going to Notre Dame. Yeah, I saw somewhere on Twitter that he was taking a visit to South Bend. I once they leave, I don't really keep track of all that stuff. But hey, they did just lose Tyree, so that would make sense. Probably getting Riley Leonard, not Riley Leonard. Who is they? Is it Riley? Yeah, Riley Leonard as your quarterback. That would be a good pair, but I think Bo is a guy that probably could benefit from a fresh start somewhere else. I've kind of been wrong on him. I said before the season I thought Bo could be as good as he wants to be, but I'm kind of backtracking on that. I think Bo's kind of hit his ceiling in Clemson. 100% Big Mick. It is always college football season, man, and especially even if you take the portal stuff out of it, man, recruiting is just kind of a year-long thing now outside of a dead period here and a dead period there, man. But it seems like there's always something going on in recruiting. Ohio State has high profile players in the portal. Yes, they do, man. I don't know what's going on up there in Columbus, man, but it does not sound or it does not look very good, man. You got your starting quarterback in the portal. Saw Julian Fleming's in the portal, man. There's about 8, 9 other guys, man. I don't know what's going on up there. Maybe they're tapped out on NIL money or something. That's hard to believe, but yeah, it's something's going on in Columbus, no doubt about it, man. It is. It was odd. It's odd when you lose your starting quarterback when you're at a school like Ohio State. Now, it's not that weird to see a guy like Leonard leaving Duke or a guy like Hartman leaving Wake Forest. When you see a younger guy like C.J. Stroud, the starting quarterback at Ohio State, announce he's leaving the portal, he's kind of raising some eyebrows. I know they've got Aaron Nolan coming in 2024, but I don't know, man. There's sounds like something's up, something's going on up there. When will we find out who the early enrollees that will practice with the team for the bowl game? Probably when bowl practice starts, and like last year, if there's any, it won't be but a handful, just a few. I remember, I think Burley was around last year for bowl practice, and Khalil Barnes was, and maybe Shelton Lewis, if I'm remembering right. But it was only two or three of them. It wasn't a whole bunch of them, and if any are around for bowl practice this year, that'll you'll find out once it starts. That info will get out. Need to pay Eason. He's knocking it out of the park. Yeah, he got. I can't remember what Eason's making. I remember he got a pay bump last year. I'm not sure he'll get one this year since he got one last year. We'll see. Yeah, he's absolutely earning his money, man. How many offensive linemen has Clemson offered in the portal so far? Just the one official offer, and he's a guy with multiple years of eligibility. I'm not even 100% sold on him being a instant starter. I'm not sure he would be. That this is Dabo bringing a guy in here that looks like he's going to need a little bit of development before he's ready to play at this level, which is a little surprising to me. I knew Dabo was always going to go to the portal, but I figured it'd always be for older guys, man, that had a year, maybe 2 years eligibility left, and who are ready to play immediately. And I'm not sure. I'm not sure Aaron is. Yeah, I was waiting on this one. Would the staff go after Fleming from Ohio State? Remember, Clemson was in on him in high school recruiting before he committed to Ohio State, but he's he's been a bust so far, man. The little I've seen of him, he's not looked very good. You think you're frustrated with Clemson's receivers blocking on the perimeter now? Watch this guy play at Ohio State, man. It's not very good. He's been a little injury prone, and I could see where he might be jumping in the portal, commanding a high price tag. This doesn't strike me as the type of portal recruitment Clemson's going to get in on. So I would have to say no. Do you think recruiting misses played more into Austin being let go, or was this guy just a home run upgrade and you just couldn't pass on him? I do think the lack of results in this recruiting class played a big time part. Um, if you read Dabo Sweeney's quotes today about Matt Luke, he mentions the recruiting, his strength in recruiting. I don't yeah, Dabo is very meticulous in the things he says. He usually says nothing by mistake. So that kind of tells me yes, it definitely played a part. And I thought Austin killed it in the last recruiting class, man. But he went 0 for 3 on the in-state guys. Again, two of those guys you're not getting probably no matter what. But still, he went 0 for 3, and then he goes 1 for 6 on the guys that came to the big official visit weekend. To me, that's where what really hurt. Going 1 for 6 on those guys. You can survive going 0 for 3 on those in-state guys. I'm not sure Blake Franks is a guy that's even on the radar if he's not an in-state guy. Um, Cam Pringle is not an instant impact guy. I think Josiah Thompson is. I think he's capable of coming in and playing, pretty quickly. But those other two guys, I'm not sure they are. Um, Franks definitely is. But when you go 1 for 6 on the guys you invite to the big official visit weekend and put all that time and effort into it and strike out on that many of them, that's alarming. And then you go after, once you get out of the summer, like guys like Favor Edwin, Elijah Thurman, um, Matt Dennis. There's been several. Those are the ones I can think of off the top of my head, and you've not landed any of those guys either. Um, Thurman's still a possibility. He goes to South Carolina next weekend. He's been to Clemson a couple of times this year. It's coming down to Clemson and South Carolina. and I have no idea which way he's leaning. I'm not sure how much the hiring of Luke factors in here. We'll have to wait and see after he takes that visit to Columbia. Pretty sure he'll probably sign during the early signing period, although he's not said that for sure. But I do think recruiting played a big part, but I don't think it was the only thing. If you watch Clemson's offensive line this season prior to the Notre Dame game, man, it was ugly after about week 3. I don't think when Garrett Riley wants to run a bunch of counters and traps, he wants to get the lineman out pulling. And when you watch Clemson's offensive linemen try to get out and pull, man, they just aren't very good at it. And starting with the Notre Dame game, they kind of went away from a lot of that stuff and went back to zone blocking. Um, Thomas Austin played in his own blocking system. He didn't have to play in a system like the one Garrett Riley's trying to incorporate here at Clemson. So I'm not sure how well he coaches that system. Maybe he coaches it fine, but it did the results weren't there, and you don't want to have to simplify your blocking scheme that handcuffs your offensive coordinator. You just don't want to do it. So I think a couple of things were going against him. I don't think it had anything to do with just Luke being available and you can't pass up on him. I think this is a results-based business, and the results of 2023 were not very favorable for Thomas Austin, unfortunately. Any whispers of Clemson and Florida State leaving the conference? Man, there's been a lot of whispers about that for going on about a year now. If you're talking about because of Florida State getting left out, I'd make the argument that Florida State's administration kind of showing their tail over the summer about the conference and the revenue and threatening to leave and all that didn't help their cause here at all. It might have hurt them. I'm sure y'all can hear my dogs going full back there. Just ignore that. But yeah, there's always plenty of whispers about Clemson and Florida State leaving the conference. Always. That's coming. The ACC is a dead man walking. Cannot survive bringing in half the television revenue of your counterparts in the SEC and the Big Ten. It's not sustainable. It's not a sustainable model for success. It's coming. I know we were all looking for this big announcement in October, and people got all excited thinking there was going to be this announcement that Clemson was leaving and they were going to the SEC or the Big Ten. But I think there's something coming. I just don't think that's what the announcement's going to be. I think we're in for a legal battle here more so than anything before all the before the dust settles. Let's put it that way. But yeah, I don't. 3-4 years from now, I don't see Clemson, Florida State being in the ACC, and I could see a couple more going with them, including North Carolina. Can portal players play with a new team? No, they cannot play in the bowl games. They can't enroll to the next semester. They'll be eligible for spring practice. Yes, DJ Westlak's in the portal, and he was a guy that Clemson heavily pursued. He's one I'm going to keep one eye on here over the next few days because I do think Clemson's in the market for a defensive end. Just found out he was in the portal today, this afternoon. So I haven't really done a lot of digging on him yet. I don't know if he's a potential candidate or not. We'll see. But he is definitely a guy I would keep one eye on. Have you watched Chase Bird much? I see some folks decided he could be the next PWO wide receiver star, not rim throw level exactly, just real good. I actually talked to Chase today. Good kid. I have not watched him much. I only know the name. I did not see this one coming. Um, I'm not sure he saw it coming, to be honest, before the offer came. But this is a kid that had full rides from multiple Ivy League schools. He had about 7 or 8 offers, one of full ride offers, one of them from Maryland. I think it was. There was one Power 5 offer in there. I think it was from Maryland. He said he turned all those down to walk to go to PWO route at Clemson. Man, I think that speaks volumes about that kid. Um, he is confident in his ethic. He is confident in his ability to um, earn his spot. That's how he termed it. Earn his spot. So I'm gonna have to go and watch his film. I have not watched it yet, so we'll have to. I'll let you know next time we talk what I think about it. But he gave me his stats from the season today. He had 40 something catches, 800 yards, and double digit touchdowns from Greer. So I got to go watch his film too. Is the Luke hire going to persuade coaches to revisit the 2024 offensive line targets? Probably not. We're late in the game here. Early signing days on the 20th. They're out. They're out on on the road recruiting right now, which is why we haven't heard from Dabo Sweeney. Usually, when after bowl invitations are accepted and the sites are announced and stuff, you'll hear. We usually get Dabo that night, but we didn't yesterday. They're out on the road recruiting. That'll come later this week. Usually, once a guy passes on Clemson and commits somewhere else, it's the recruit that has to initiate the contact if they want to revisit. I'm not saying they never ever you know go back and check on a kid, but I don't know. I just don't see. Um, I don't see it with any of these guys. I think they're gonna. We saw them finally decide to take Watson Young, who Dabo's gonna get killed for taking because he's a low 3-star and he goes to Daniel. I was told by somebody up there last night that if that kid was an inch and a half taller, he'd have schools drooling over him. So they think he can play. It's just he doesn't really have the measurables, and it's really the height. Um, but Clemson's done pretty good with developing guys like that on the interior, particularly at center. We'll see if they can do it with him. What do you think about Juju Preston? Surprised we offer such a low-rated receiver so early, but the staff must see something in him. Turn on his film, man. That guy can motor. Man, he can fly. And it's not that he's low-rated. He just hasn't been rated at all by 24/7 or Rivals. The only site that's rated him is On 3, and they've got him as a 3-star, but at the same time, they've got him ranked inside the top 100. Now, make that make sense. I cannot wrap my head around that. He's a 3-star guy ranked inside the top 100. I don't understand how that works. But I know a lot of you pull up a kid's profile on 24/7 or Rivals, and you see NA or no stars there. You think he's on you think he's lowly rated. It's usually a case of they just haven't looked at him yet. They haven't rated him at all. So I would be willing to bet this kid's going to end up a mid to high 4-star. He's small. He's a slot guy, but Clemson's trying to bring more speed into that wide receiver room because they are lacking it severely. And this guy brings a ton of speed, man. He's got great hands. Watching his film, he looks like he runs pretty good routes. I love this pickup. This is the one that I was talking about earlier when I said caught us all off guard. I don't even think the coaches were expecting him to commit. Didn't even he committed to the coaches that were there for his state title game Saturday, I think it was. Um, didn't even post it online till the next day. So you're talking about a kid doesn't care about the attention. I had to reach out to him and ask him was he committed to Clemson, and he said yeah. Um, so kind of one of those that looks like the perfect kind of culture fit. He's definitely not about the attention, that's for sure. Again, he didn't even post his commitment tweet until the next day. So it's definitely not an all about me guy. But I've watched a little bit of his film yesterday, and I I was blown away. I was blown away. What's up with Bradley Shaw? Hey, that's a great question, man, because if anybody's got the answer to that, they'd be the first. This is a guy who just he doesn't speak publicly, man. Nobody in his family does. They just don't talk to reporters. They don't put anything out about his recruitment. Best I can tell, he's only visited Clemson this season for games. I don't think he's been to a game anywhere else. Um, Auburn was thought to be in it, but they ended up flipping another linebacker and taking somebody else. So I think that takes Auburn out of the equation. I've said it a couple of times now. I think that it's not about if, this is more about when. Um, I would assume he's going to sign during the early signing period. Um, whether he announces tomorrow or just signs quietly on December 20th, I have no idea, man. I don't know what to expect at all with Bradley Shaw, outside of the fact that I do think he's going to be a part of the class. How it plays out, I just don't know. Because again, I think he's a kid that doesn't care about all the attention. A lot of comments from that teaming up Eason and Rump is like creating another Marvel superhero movie. Yeah, I kind of tend to agree. Rump's been around. He is well seasoned. Eason's well seasoned. He's been around. He hasn't been in the college game a long time, but man, they know what it takes to develop guys and put them into the NFL. And to me, that's the winning recipe. Uh, I've said it a few times on here that I thought Lemansky Hall had become a weak link on that staff. I just thought ends were slow to develop. They don't line up to come play at Clemson the way they used to coming out of high school. So it started to affect recruiting. I thought it was a spot that needed to be addressed, and man, did he ever address it. This is Rump's second stint at Clemson, so he's not like he's unfamiliar with the territory. With the kicker we signed, do you think the freshman has the upper hand? The kicker Clemson's got coming in is Nolan Hauser. He's considered arguably the top kicker in the country. Um, if Robert Gunn doesn't get his kinks ironed out, he's absolutely going to have the upper hand. There's really nobody else to compete with him. And Gunn's going to be on scholarship. Hauser's going to be on scholarship. So that's two scholarships devoted to kickers. They're not going to give a third. They're not going to give a third scholarship to another place kicker. So it's got to be one of those two guys. Gotta have someone to help develop Cade, or we won't get any wide receiver coming in. Cade just don't seem to have the it factor. Garrett Riley's your quarterback coach. He's been pretty successful with developing quarterbacks. I would caution against throwing in the white towel on Cade just yet. Will we have it? Yeah. I don't know who's going to be at bowl practice from the class yet. We'll see. I think I touched on that one a minute ago. I don't know yet. It'll have to be some early enrollees if they could get there early enough. They'll let them practice a little bit. Can they had a few do it last year? I know Khalil Barnes was. I'm pretty sure Khalil Barnes was one, and Shelton Lewis was one. I want to say Vic Burley was one. My memory's not what it used to be, but there were two, three, maybe four of them that were around last year. Yes, Julian Fleming is a guy Clemson wanted badly. And so far he's been a bust, and I would not. I do not expect this to be one Clemson gets in on. I mean, I can see him commanding a high price tag, and those are the guys that they're not going to go after the guys that are trying to, you know, create bin wars, and I could see Fleming being one of those guys because we talking about former 5 star. He's got some name recognition, um, even though he hasn't really done anything at this level yet. Is Clemson pursuing any more transfers? I fully expect Clemson to address, or at least try to address, offensive line and defensive end in the portal at a minimum. We'll see if they look at a wide receiver or a linebacker. To me, those are the 4 positions to watch. Um, we've already seen him offer to one offensive lineman, and he took that thing public, which I'm sure the Clemson coaches hated because as soon as he went public with the Clemson offer, offers just started pouring in from everywhere. Because once Clemson offers the guy, you got to think he's pretty good. Right now, everybody else is offering him, man. He just blew up. They like to do their portal recruiting kind of under the radar. They don't want to create all the publicity, which will lead to something like happened with Aaron, where he announces it and then all these other teams jump in behind you. So portal recruiting is not always publicized the way high school recruiting is. So I'll just say, just because you're not seeing it talked about, don't think there's nothing going on. Um, right now they're out on the road. A bunch of the assistants are out on the road, kind of putting the finishing touches on the 2024 class. You'll probably start hearing the portal discussion start amping up some later this week, first and next week. But again, I would just caution you against thinking that they're not doing anything just because you're not hearing anything. I talked to 3 guys in the portal last year that Clemson had contact with early in the process when they were trying to decide who they were going to chase and who they weren't before they realized they weren't going to have any room. I talked to them after the fact, and these were all off the record conversations. They didn't even want me to put their name out there. So portal recruiting is a little bit different than high school recruiting. They like to publicize that stuff and get their names out there. These a lot of these portal recruitments are done, under the radar. That's the kind of those are the ones I think you'll see Clemson involved in, not the ones where um, you see them announce I'm going here this weekend, I'm going there next weekend. I'm not saying they'll never be involved in one like that. I just don't think it'll be very often because those are the ones that tend to be kids trying to drive up their prices and create bidding wars, and those are the kids that Clemson's trying to stay away from. Like I know of a kid this year that, give you an example, um, got a bunch of NIL money last year. Not a port. He came in from the portal last year, played for his team this year, got about 400 grand in NIL money. Got hurt, didn't play a whole lot, got healthy, was cleared with about 3 games left in the season, refused to play unless they paid him more money. And he didn't play another snap the rest of the year. And now he's back in the portal again. So those are the kind of guys Clemson's trying to avoid when they get into this portal stuff. Bradley Shaw is the cherry on top for the 2024 class. Yeah, that'll be a good way to finish it off. For me, a better way would be to pluck Elijah Thurman and nab him because Clemson they need one more offensive lineman in this class, and that was not going to stop them from going to the portal. They're still going to look to add at least one through the portal. They wanted to take 3, and so far they've only got one, and one of them's a developmental guy. So I would love for them to be able to finish the deal with Elijah Thurman. Not sure they will, but to me, I get what you're saying with Shaw, man, because it's a little thin at linebacker too. If Barrett Carter decides to join Jeremiah Trotter and head off to the NFL, not sure he's going to, but if he does, um, they'd be pretty thin. So that would be a big get in that regard. I just look at it from the woes they've suffered on the recruiting trail with the offensive line. Just actually, let's just put it this way: the cherry on top would getting both those guys. Shipley returning. I cannot answer that for you just yet. I don't know. I'm not sure he's decided yet. Um, you know, a couple of days ago, I would have said I'm 99% sure he's not coming back. With this new offensive line coaching hire, um, I'm not quite as sure. I still lean towards thinking he's going to leave. Even with the Dominique Thomas, announcing he's going to transfer, Clemson's still going to be one over their number at running back if both Shipley and Moffa come back. So one of those guys leaving would open up a spot for you. Numbers are tight. They don't have room to go to the portal and take 5, 6, 7 guys. They might be able to take 3, maybe 4 tops because numbers are tight. They were tight last year. They're still tight because there's a lot of youngsters on this team still. Um, so I still lean towards one of those running backs leaving, I've kind of been. People have hinted to me that Shipley's always been on a 3-year plan. He's already graduated. He walked down for senior day. So it wouldn't shock me if he went NFL. He might just be waiting on his draft grade and seeing what that is before he makes his final decision. But again, a couple of days ago, I was 99.9% sure, and I'm not nearly that confident that he's gone now. I still lean towards thinking he's going, but I'm not 99% sure now. I do think there's a chance he comes back. Brady's got a bold prediction. David Sanders will be a Clemson Tiger. Just watch. Well, I'm gonna tell you what, this hire today does nothing to hurt that cause. That is for sure. That is for sure. Because he is the, he's the priority. He is the priority guy in the 2025 class right there in Charlotte. Um, they're very. He's a guy they've been in on for a long time. He's been attending Clemson camps for a while. Very familiar with him. Those relationships are deep rooted and well established. Probably going to be a Clemson Georgia battle, and that hire that they made today doesn't do anything to hurt your cause. Reading between the lines, Riley wanted to run an offense through blocking schemes that Thomas Austin just couldn't coach, get his guys to perform on the line. That made Dabo go hire Luke. Now, that's just speculation. I'm just speculating. I'm not saying he couldn't coach it, but when those guys tried to get out there and do some of that pulling and stuff, and I'm not an offensive line expert by any means. Let's put that out there right now. Um, they just look slow. They did, and they look inept. Um, they played much better when they started simplifying it and dumbing it down and going hat on a hat. But the more complex stuff, man, they just did not look very good. And so, I think that plays a part. And again, I'm speculating about him not being able to coach it. He didn't play in that kind of system. It's not what he learned. He spent a lot of time under Robbie Caldwell, who taught the simplified zone blocking scheme. But I think the recruiting misses played as big a part, or even a bigger part, in this thing than anything. Um, there was some serious issues on the recruiting trail with offensive linemen in this 2024 class. What about Cam Coleman? He was wearing Clemson gloves. Yeah, I don't know what was up with that. Maybe trying to drive up his price because that was never going to happen. The very next day, he flips from A&M to Auburn. Maybe he got the Auburn Tigers mixed up with the Clemson Tigers. I don't know. Um, I saw that too. I have no idea what it's about. Clemson backed off him fairly quickly after the official visit weekend, even more quickly than I had assumed back then at the time. Um, they backed off him very quickly once they realized what was tied in with his recruitment and stuff, and that was never going to happen. Can you talk about what Matt Luke brings to the blocking scheme? I'll try. Again, I am not an offensive line expert by any stretch. I think he gives you more flexibility in what you can do and what you can coach up there. Because again, I'm not sure Thomas Austin was able to coach at a high enough level of what Garrett Riley wanted to do on offense. And again, this is just me speculating here, just based on what I saw with my eyes over the first half of the season. Because Clemson's offensive line it was piss poor those first few games. Well, I thought they played fine all right during the Duke game, but when they got past Duke and the two cupcakes, I thought they was all right against Florida State. But after that, there was a stretch where they were bad. Um, again, Garrett Riley, Clemson for a long time leaned heavily on the inside zone runs. It was kind of a staple of the old Clemson offense, and Riley wants to run more counters and traps, which call for offensive linemen to get out in space and pull. And when Clemson's offensive linemen tried to do it, they looked slow to react, confused. They just looked inept. And I think Matt Luke gives you the ability to coach these guys up to a higher level in that regard, trying to do what Riley wants to do on offense, as opposed to what Austin was able to do last year. He's Luke's a guy that has been around, man. He's been around. He's coached a lot of really good offensive linemen. He has recruited and signed a bunch of really good offensive linemen. Go look at Georgia's offensive line in 2021. Matt Luke was the coach. Um, might have been the best offensive line in the country that year. They were just blowing people off the ball. And we've not seen Clemson's offensive line dominate, not even during the national title years, man. Those offensive lines were average, maybe good. They weren't really good. They weren't elite by any stretch. You had generational quarterbacks that were able to mask some of the deficiencies along that offensive line. You had running backs like Travis Etienne and Wayne Gallman that were also able to help in that regard. And then you had dogs at receiver. Um, when you don't have those type of quarterbacks and you've got a young guy trying to learn on the job like you've got with Cade Klubnik, those inefficiencies, they or deficiencies, shall I say, they really start to show. You really start to see them, and we saw that for a long stretch this year. I mean, it was bad, and I think Matt Luke also brings you some credibility on the recruiting trail. Clemson does not have this track record of developing offensive linemen and turning them into, you know, first, second, third, fourth round draft picks. They've had a few, don't get me wrong. Carmen was a third round pick. I think Simpson was a fourth round pick. Um, was Carmen a second round? I can't remember. He's second or third. I think Simpson was a fourth round pick. And they've had some guys drafted lower in the draft and some undrafted free agents. That's something that gets used against them on the recruiting trail. When you're recruiting an offensive lineman and you're trying to go head to head with Georgia, and Georgia can say, "Look, you come here, and you're getting developed and prepared for the NFL. Look, we put this guy in the league. He was drafted in the first round. We put this guy in the league. He was drafted in the second round." Clemson can't say that, and it's something that gets used against them on the recruiting trail. And a hire like this kind of nullifies that argument. I was waiting on this one. I still think the wide receivers coach needs to go. And I've said it many times on here before. I'm torn on Tyler Grisham. Um, and obviously, Dabo thinks the receivers are in good hands. Otherwise, there'd have been a change made. Um, Grisham gets a lot of slack. I know it. I get it. I'm not convinced he's the problem. Somebody's going to have to make a better case to convince me because I'm not convinced. I see guys like Dakari Collins, EJ Williams, Um, who else? Frank Latz and Ajo, all those receivers who were at Clemson. Some of those who Jeff Scott started recruiting before he left. All those guys that were at Clemson, all of them have left. They've gone on to play under different coaching staffs, yet they still aren't developing. Can't blame Tyler Grisham for that. So um, maybe this is more about evaluations, which Grisham is a part of. Don't get me wrong, but some of those guys, some of those were Jeff Scott guys, so that those would be Jeff Scott evaluations. I don't think the wide receiver room was in the greatest of shape when Jeff Scott left. I thought it was full of bigger body, slower 50-50 ball type guys, and the game's kind of going away from that. You're seeing teams starting to employ more of the smaller, faster, twitchier guys with the blazing speed. And Clemson didn't have a lot of those kind of dudes when Jeff Scott left. I think Christian's done a good job in bringing a little bit more diversity into that room, so to speak, when it comes to the bigger guys and the smaller guys. And now you got Stellato and Antonio Brown, Antonio Williams and Tyler Brown. So you see, you got a little bit more variety in there now. For me, the biggest gripe I have with receivers is their blocking out on the perimeter. I don't know if that's coaching or if that's just a lack of dog in those guys. Again, for me, I'm not convinced it's not Clemson's just had some terrible evaluations with some of these guys. Um, we're seeing Antonio Williams has been pretty good since he's been here. Tyler Brown was pretty good this year. Troy Stellato was a breath of fresh air this year and a surprise. I don't think anybody expected anything out of him. But yeah, I mean, I agree. I'm not saying guys are developing at this high rate at Clemson. I'm just not convinced it's because of Tyler Grisham. Um, I think he's had some bad luck with injuries. I think you need to find out why you can't keep receivers healthy. I'm not sure you can point the finger at Tyler Grisham for that. But I do think it is interesting that Dabo decided to keep him and not move on from him. I think that speaks volumes about what he thinks about the coaching of the wide receivers. And let's not forget, Dabo's heavily involved with the wide receiver coaching. We get to go to practices sometimes, and I can tell you, I've seen it. He is way more involved with the wide receiver coaching than he is any other position, and that's still true to this day. He is very hands on with those wide receivers, so he's involved in a lot of that too. Again, like I said to begin with, I'm torn on Grisham. I'm just not convinced he's the issue. Somebody's gonna have to do a better job of convincing me that he's the problem. And he's got two studs coming in this year. Um, I do think playing in Garrett Riley's offense had something to do with those guys coming to Clemson. Don't get me wrong, but I don't think it was all about that. I talked to a lot of recruits. They love Tyler Grisham. They they rave about him. So again, I'm kind of torn on him. I don't know. Um, Part of me wants to think he's had a lot of bad luck, and the evaluations have been bad, and then he took over a room that just wasn't what it was a couple of years prior. And part of me wonders if maybe he's not a weak spot on that staff. I don't know. It's a good question, man. But I think the fact that Dabo Sweeney kept him tells you what he thinks. Is Bryant Wesco going to immediately give us a legitimate threat as a boundary wide receiver? One of those guys better, because you don't have one right now. You don't have one at all with Bo gone. I kind of lean towards thinking, and again, this is just speculation. They had exit interviews with all those guys last week. So they all went down and sat down with Dabo Sweeney and talked about their futures and then made decisions on whether to stay or leave. I have a feeling that Bo was told that his job was going to be up for grabs with those two freshmen coming in next year. Clemson's got to be better at receiver than they have been, period, especially at the boundary. They've not been good enough. And a lot of that has got to do with not being able to keep those guys healthy. They gotta find a way to keep those guys healthy. It is what it is. Um, like he said, the best ability is availability, man, and they have just not been available. Um, but I think Wesco or Moore, one of those guys better come in and be ready to roll because otherwise you're going to be in trouble if you don't end up getting somebody out of the portal. You're just going to see more of what we've seen. Naquan Alexander, yeah, I don't know much about him. I can tell you West Side's got some dudes. I watched them play Saturday. They got some dudes at receiver, man. They got a couple of receivers that good. One of them's committed to North Carolina State right now. Jamar Boston, I think's his name. He's a dude. They got another guy. Golly, I forgot his name, but they got two, three good, really good receivers on that team, man. West Side does. With all these QBs entering the portal, would Clemson even glance at any of them? Clemson's not going to the portal for a starting quarterback. No. Mm-mm. Now, I do think there's a possibility they bring somebody in to as an extra arm with Helms leaving. If Tyson doesn't decide to come back, you've only got three: Vizina, Klubnik, and Trent Pierman. You kind of need a fourth. So my preference would be bringing in somebody that's good enough to push Klubnik because he needs somebody pushing him. Vizina's not ready to push him. I'm not sure he's going to be ready to push him next year either. He was a long ways from being ready to play when he got to campus. So is Clemson going to take a look at a starter? No. Uh-uh. Number one, they're all in on Klubnik, man. They've not given up on him. Number two, that's going to cost you about 1.5 mil. And again, I'm telling you, Clemson's not getting into these bidding wars in the portal. Um, I do think it's a possibility, depending on how things play out, that they look and bring in an extra quarterback the way they did with Tyson, the way they did with Hunter Johnson. I think they expected more out of Paul Tyson than what they got. I 100% believe they brought him in to be the backup to Klubnik last year and push him, and he got hurt early on. Wasn't able to really participate in spring practice and wasn't able to push him at all because he wasn't able to. He was taking reps against the air. He couldn't throw the ball because he had a thumb injury. So I mean, it just set him back, and it never panned out the way I think they thought it was going to. But I do think they could benefit from having somebody that could push Klubnik because competition makes everybody better. I just don't think they're going to bring somebody in and open the job up. How much input do you think Riley had in Dabo going from Matt Luke? Oh, I'm sure he had input. Um, I, knowing the way Dabo operates, I'm sure he had some input, but I don't know how much. That might have been one of those. Dabo always talks about having a list of guys at his disposal. Maybe this is a guy Dabo already had in mind since heck before Riley even got there. I don't know. Um, I would be willing to bet they at least had, they at least talked about it. I would imagine. I can't imagine any scenario in which Dabo goes out and hires a guy that Riley's not on board with. Um, so yeah, I'd say he had some input. I don't know how much. Her portal is really hurting high school athletes across all divisions. Yeah, golly, I can't even talk. The portal does have a negative impact on high school recruiting. Absolutely, man. With kids moving around so much from team to team, they're taking spots that would have ultimately gone to a high school player. So yeah, it absolutely hurts high school recruiting. It also speeds up the recruiting process. because guys know they need to lock those spots up a lot more quickly now. So they get them secured and they don't have to worry about their spot going to a portal player if they kind of drag their feet on making a decision. But yeah, it's one of those unintended consequences of this whole deal. Wondering if Noble Johnson would be ready to play next year. That was if physically he's there, but mentally, he's absolutely 100% there physically. Man, that dude is built like a tank. I Man, watching him at camp a couple of summers ago, man, he just I was just blown away. But yeah, it was obvious in the spring game he was not ready. It was obvious he was a ways away from being ready to roll. Some guys need a year. Some guys need two. Hopefully, he's one that only needs one because I don't think he is. He's not a boundary guy, so he's not the guy Clemson needs out there at boundary. But I do think he can be a key a contributor, a big contributor to this offense. I think he's got something to contribute. Um, I just don't see him as a number one type route receiver. I see him as a number two. Um, and there's a lot of two good number two. Got diarrhea of the mouth all of a sudden. There are a lot of really good number two receivers out there. I think he can be one of those. I'm telling you, he blew my doors off watching him work out at camp that day. He was a guy I had never really even I shouldn't say I never heard of him, but I didn't know very much about him until he came to work out at Dabo's high school camp that day. Got offered that day. Um, so he might have been the best receiver I saw that summer. I mean, he's just got all the measurables. He's got all the intangibles. Just took him a little bit to pick it up. Hopefully he's ready to roll this year, man, because they could use him. They need to be better at receiver. No, Barrett Carter has not made any announcement. Uh, Do you see maybe one of them being punter? If you're asking me if I think a punter gets a scholarship, no. Aiden Swanson's coming back next year, and they've already got Jack Smith on scholarship, who was one of the top punters in the 2023 class. I think it was big kid, 6'5", 250 pounds. Man, he can boom them. He's just got to. Last I heard, he just hadn't found that consistency, man. But he is routinely booming balls off the roof of the indoor facility when we're there. How many people do you think we finished the 2024 class with? Take what you got right now and add two more. And I think that's probably what you're going to have. Maybe they add somebody into, after early signing day, before the signing day in February. We'll see. You have to see what's left and who's still out there and um, how the dust settles with everybody. But I think they're probably going to add two more guys, offensive lineman, and they're at least going to try to add another offensive lineman and then the linebacker. Who do you think is next? Peter Woods, meaning they can start day one. Well, first of all, Peter Woods didn't start this year. He did play a lot, but he didn't start. But I get your point nonetheless. Let's see. Who do I think can come in and? Man, I'm trying to think. I think Sammy Brown's going to come in and play a lot on the defensive side. I'm not sure he's going to be a starter, but I think he's going to. I think he's going to be in the two deep. He's going to play a lot. Um, on the offensive side, I think T.J. Moore and Brian Wesco are both going to come in and play a lot. We'll see if we'll see if Jama May can crack, get some early playing time. Might depend on who all comes back, but it's hard to get on the field at running back as a freshman. There's a lot to learn with the pass protections and stuff, but I think he's going to be really good. But as far as guys in this class that I think can make the biggest contributions early, give me Sammy Brown, Bryant Wesco, and TJ Moore. How is Vic Burley doing? He looked to be moving around pretty good. Saw him at the South Carolina game. He looked to be doing well. I haven't really heard about him since he had his surgery, but he looks to be recuperating well. I remember thinking to myself when I saw him, he's moving around really good. In that class, Peter Woods gets a lot of attention, but I think Burley's going to be a monster on that defensive line when they get him healthy. Uh, I think Stephon Green's going to be really good too, and I think AJ Hoffler's going to be really good. Out of all those defensive linemen that Clemson signed in the 2023 class, there were 6 of them. To me, the only real question I have is how good. What is David Ajabe's ceiling? Because I see him as kind of this tweener type guy. I think he's got a high ceiling. I think he's a high ceiling, low floor kind of guy. If you get my drift. Um, but I do like the fact that Chris Rump's going to be coaching those guys now. That gives me a lot more confidence in Ajabe being able to develop. So I think the defensive line's in great shape. They're going over, looking at the next 2 couple years at least, with Woods and Burley, and not only those freshmen, man, but guys like DeMonte Capehart, Peyton Page, Trey Williams, if you can keep him healthy. I mean, the interior of that defensive line is just stacked. If you could go get a portal guy to kind of plug that gap at end, whew, man, Clemson's defensive front's going to be nasty. Oh, I was waiting on this one too. I thought I was going to get out of here without getting asked this because I got a feeling y'all are not going to like my answer. What do I think about Florida State being left out of the playoff? I think it sucks for Florida State, man. I think it sucks big time. I think it sucks for the ACC. Um, you know, since the advent of the 14 playoff, man, this thing's kind of worked itself out every year. Um, and the committee didn't have to make this type of decision because, again, it tended to work itself out. Well, it didn't this year. Ironically, in the last year of the 14 playoff, that would be the year that it didn't work itself out. You had too many teams vying for too little spots. And I'm a big fan of the 14 playoff. I hate to see it expanding to 12. I think that's too many. I think 6 would be a better number. But um, again, I feel bad for Florida State, but I think they got it right. I don't think Florida State's one of the 4 best teams, and I think that's got to be the goal. Um, it, I can't believe I'm going to say this, man, and I hate to even say it, but they're not the same without Jordan Travis. And I know people's going to say, well, look, Ohio State did this with Cardale Jones the year they had to go with their 3rd string. Yeah, well, Cardale Jones went out and lit up Wisconsin in their conference championship game, threw for about 300 yards, and it was like 12 of 17. I mean, and Florida State's quarterback stunk it up. Last impressions can make a lasting impact. And I would have loved to have seen what happened if Jordan Travis stayed healthy. If that committee would have had the cojones to leave Alabama out. I tend to think probably not. Texas might have been the team that got screwed. But, it pains me to say it because I think it hurts the ACC that Florida State doesn't get in at 13-0. And I think they showed tremendous resiliency winning against Louisville, even though I think that's a very overrated Louisville team on Saturday. Winning with a guy that with no passing game at all, and you still find a way to win on the back of a really good defense. But again, if you're asking me who the four best teams are, I'm not putting Florida State in because I don't think they are. I'm not 100% certain they are with Gerald Jordan Travis, but I'm not. I'm definitely not putting them in without him. And I know Tate Rodemaker to be back by the time the playoff rolls around. But that's a hard one, man. That's a hard one. I think it's bad for the ACC. I think it sets a terrible precedent. But at the same time, I said I was torn on Tyler Grissom Road. I'm kind of torn on this thing too, because I kind of get it. I get why you leave Florida State out the way they've looked on offense the other night. Um, for me, I know the argument has come down to should it be Bama or Florida State. Interesting, if you go back to the old BCS, man, somebody tweeted out today what it would have been under the old system, who the top four teams would have been. Florida State would have been in, and Texas would have been out. Um, Now I know they got head-to-head win over Bama, but if Jordan Travis is healthy, man, I'd have loved to seen what that committee would have done. Would if they would have still left Florida State out. But there's it's in writing that the committee can one of their guidelines they can use is they can gauge whether a player or a coach who is unavailable due to injury or whatever else, what kind of impact it has on their postseason performance. So it is part of the criteria. I, I knew it was coming. I knew Florida State was going to get left out, man, and I hate it. I hate it for those guys, and I'm not a fan of Mike Norvell at all, man, and I'm not a fan of anything that makes me feel bad for him. But I feel bad for that guy yesterday, man. You could when they made that announcement, it showed that live look in that Florida State locker room, man. Man, you could just see it. They were in disbelief, and I get it. I understand it. But again, I understand the other side of it too. I just I don't think they're one of the four best teams. I think they got it right. And I know a lot of people will say, well, we don't have to worry about this next year. Next year, you'd just be that they'll be arguing about which 8-4 team should have been in and ended up getting left out. I mean, there's always going to be an argument about who got left out and who should have got in and this, that, and the other. And maybe not to the same degree there is right now. Because again, most years this thing tends to work itself out, and it just didn't this year, man. I bet I got a feeling those guys and those guys on that committee were hoping and praying Florida State was going to lose Saturday night. And I'll be honest, man, I picked them to lose. I thought they were going to without their first two quarterbacks. Man, they showed a hell of a lot of resiliency in winning that game the way they did with their third string quarterback. There ain't a lot of teams could do that. So for me, it's hard to sit here and make the argument against them. But at the same time, man, I get it. I get the other side of it too. I see both sides, and I'm probably deflecting a little bit here. I get it. I get the decision, and if it was me, I'd probably left them out too. Oregon State just fell apart. Yeah, hey man, I've been telling people for 2 weeks on Facebook who were hoping for a Clemson Oregon State matchup in the bowl game that was man. Don't wish for that, especially once you knew for a fact they were losing their coach. That was it. Um, Time we got to leave. That was it. Head coach leaving, you're left out of the realignment. You don't even have a conference to call home next year. I had a feeling there were guys were going to start leaving there in mass, and DJ was going to be one. There is. I didn't think there was going to be anything to look forward to in that matchup, man. And I'm glad they did not get matched up with those guys. Can't see ship getting a high grade. No, I don't either. But I think I said it earlier, man. I've been told that he's kind of always wanted to be on the 3-year plan, and he is. He is He's graduated already. And there are some guys who are just ready to be done with school and move on to the next level. And I don't know if he's one of those guys. Maybe he is, maybe he isn't. And another thing with the position he plays, man, you don't want to put too much wear and tear on your body. You've got a short shelf life as is. So maybe that plays a part in that thing too. Um, yeah, I don't. He's not. I don't see him getting a high NFL draft grade, but maybe he's still waiting to see exactly what he gets before he makes that decision. Think that Shipley will go in the portal and go to North Carolina State and play. I do not think that. I think if Shipley leaves, he's going to be NFL bound. Do you think we have a chance to land Isaiah Gibson or John Tay Gilbert in the 2025 class? Are you asking me? Are you talking about Isaiah Campbell? If you're talking about um, Isaiah Campbell, then I think Clemson's got great shots with both those guys. I've had many conversations with Isaiah Campbell, and that guy fits the Clemson culture to a T. Um, he just kind of resonates Clemson. He just seems like the perfect fit. So yeah, I could see him. I could absolutely see him being a part of this class. Um, touch base with him today. Actually, he's told me he's planning to be at Clemson for Junior Day. They don't know what date it's going to be yet, but he's definitely going to be there. Um, and I think chances are really good on Gilbert too. I don't know. Is Ladson back in the portal again? I hadn't seen if he was. It wouldn't shock me if he was. He's getting no play at Miami. None at all. So it wouldn't shock me if he is. I hadn't seen if he is. I hadn't seen it. I've seen two of y'all saying that, so maybe he must be. It's hard enough for me to track all the Clemson guys. It's really hard for me to track the former ones too. All right. With that said, don't forget if you have not already hit that subscribe button, man. Please do so. Um, we're a little bit late tonight. I know my wife's waiting on me. We got to go pick my kid up here in a few. Otherwise, we'd keep it rolling a little while longer. And I'll take this one before we get off. We need more QB talent or more talent in the QB room. Period. Do whatever it is necessary. Where if Cade gets hurt? Uh, what if Cade gets hurt? You got to roll with your backup, man. It's like I said. I would not be shocked to see Clemson go look for an arm that can push Cade. I just don't see him going to get somebody and opening up the job and telling the job's open for grabs. That's the only thing I don't see. Yeah, I talked about Bo earlier. I can't tell you for sure why he hit the portal. I could see Bo being one of those guys that just needs a fresh start somewhere else. I think he's hit his ceiling at Clemson, and I think Clemson needs to be better at boundary, much better than what they've been. And I know I said in the offseason, I think Bo can be as good as he wants to be. I'm backtracking on that. I think Bo is what he is. Um, I don't know what was said to him in those exit interviews. I don't know if maybe he was told his starting job's not guaranteed next year with those two freshman receivers coming in, because I would assume that it's not. Those guys are going to come in, and I think they're going to make impacts quickly. Um, so I can't tell you for sure exactly why he's leaving, but I'm sure all of that played a part in it. Maybe most of all, just maybe needing a fresh start, man. Some guys need it because again, I think Bo hit his ceiling. I mean, I think he is what he is. We've seen what he is. And with that, I am being told that Latson is definitely back in the portal. So there it is. Um, I am going to bid you guys farewell. This has been another good one, man. We're real, man. This Monday night thing's starting to take off. I appreciate all you guys that tune in, man. Especially you guys that are here every week. Big Mix, one of them. Larry's one of them. Data Race is here a lot. WB2DX is here a lot. Eric Watkins. I mean, bunch. If I missed anybody, I'm sorry. Michael Forster's another one. John Sarian's here almost every week. Um, SC Crunch Country, Truett Groves is here a bunch, man. I've seen a bunch of familiar names here. Appreciate all you guys, man, that jump on with us every week and chop it up about Clemson. We don't always agree on everything, but hell, if everybody agreed in this world, man, it wouldn't be any fun. Again, if you had not hit that like button and that subscribe button, man, we please ask y'all to do so. About 65% of our views come from unsubscribed viewers. We would very much like to see that number go down a little bit. And don't forget, no Paul Talk this Wednesday. We are going to be covering the basketball game, Clemson, South Carolina. Hadn't even touched on hoops tonight, man. It's been so football busy. Brad Brownell's Tigers debuting in both polls today. Best start under Brownell's tenure, 7-0. Another big road win over Pitt over the weekend. Coming off that big road win off of Alabama, man, this team's really good. They are really good. Thought they were missing a piece, and that Gerard is that missing piece, man. He just kind of. I know PJ Hall's the catalyst, but I think Gerard was the missing piece, man. He is a cold-blooded killer. He is an assassin from outside, man. He just kills it. They're really good. South Carolina 7-0 this year too. I don't know if they've played this quite the schedule that Clemson has, because Clemson's played some competition so far. Not all 7 games, but they've got a win over Boise State. They beat Alabama on the road, Pitt on the road. Those are solid wins, and there's probably 1 or 2 more I'm forgetting. But so really, Brownell might have something cooking there this year, man. They debuted in both polls today, and another big one Wednesday night, Little John Coliseum. I think tip off's at 7 p.m. So me and Zach will be there. No Paul Talk this week. Again, appreciate everybody tuning in, man. We had I think upwards of 150 people watching live tonight. Thank you, bottom of my heart, man. Right back here next Monday night, 7 p.m. Do not miss it.